Thank you, Mr. Mullarat. I will now call on another advisor to the Justice Prize, Robert Coulter, to present our second and third recipients. Mr. Coulter is the Managing Director of the European Roma Rights Center, has been active in the human rights field in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union, as well as in the areas of health, human rights, and development. He has served in the Office of the Legal Advisor of the U.S. Department of State and as liaison to the International Criminal Tribunals for Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Robert Coulter.
Thank you. Thanks very much. First, I have the honor of introducing Professor John Dugard. When I was asked to do this, my immediate instinct was to panic at the thought of reducing the brilliant career of this man to a 2-minute soundbite, but I'll do my best. My second instinct was to plagiarize. And if you look at the nomination materials that were submitted for Professor Dugard, I think it sums it up very nicely. His nominees, who were colleagues in academia, said of him, Professor John Dugard has advanced the cause of justice as a teacher, scholar, advocate, activist, UN rapporteur, and judge. His most important achievements relate to the advocacy of human rights and humanitarian law in 3 controversial areas: South Africa, Southwest Africa, Namibia, and the occupied Palestinian territories. He's regarded by many as the father of human rights in South Africa. That was only 40 seconds. Great. So we're doing well. The subject matter that he's covered in his career is vast, ranging from attacking the legal underpinnings of apartheid, fighting against the death penalty, supporting independence in Namibia, and advocating against human rights abuses in Palestine. Professor Dugard presently is at the University of Pretoria. He's served in many academic positions prior to that, as has already been noted, chair of public international law at Leiden University. He's been an ad hoc justice on the International Court of Justice, a special rapporteur to the United Nations, member of the International Law Commission, the author of several books and over 100 law review articles. These are, without a doubt, a very impressive array of professional achievements. But I also wanted to note that we honor Professor Dugard for his common sense which has been honed in the realities of his homeland. Professor Dugard understands that the real politic of peace and reconciliation, and I just want to quote from his 2008 report to the Human Rights Council on the situation of human rights in occupied Palestine. And I'm going to just take a little editorial license and switch the words around a little bit, the order anyway. He wrote, Israel cannot expect perfect peace and the end of violence as a precondition for the ending of the occupation. That is why every effort should be made to bring the occupation to a speedy end. Until that is done, peace cannot be expected and violence will continue. Now, for those who support Israel, as do I, this may be an uncomfortable truth. But it's the job of a human rights advocate to articulate uncomfortable truths. And it's a prerequisite to the pursuit of justice. And the pursuit of justice, after all, is what the Gruber Prize is about. And it's for this pursuit of justice that we honor Professor John Dugard today. Thank you. Let me say now a few words about the Indian Law Resource Center, the final recipient of the Gruber Justice Prize today. This organization and the theme, I think, was new to the nominating committee and provoked some very interesting discussion. But in the end, without hesitation, that the committee decided to award the Indian Law Resource Center this prize. This is an organization that champions the interests of indigenous people, primarily in the Americas, although the work of the organization has precedential value throughout the world. The Indian Law Resource Center has exposed human rights violations against indigenous people in the United States, in Latin America, in South America, and rights violations in some of the most impoverished and vulnerable communities in the world. It's helped to develop skills within these communities so that they can know and protect their own rights. And the center has engaged in a lot of novel legal activity in a long-term effort before the United Nations to ensure the passage of a Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which finally occurred in 2007 after its inception 30 years before. And just as an aside, when I was working in the legal advisor's office at the State Department, the declaration at that time, the draft Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, was viewed with great nervousness. It was something that we were always dancing around, and I was both in Republican and Democratic administrations, and everybody was equally nervous. And I could say that that's probably a point of honor for the Declaration. There's an inverse relationship to its progressive nature and the degree to which it makes lawyers in the State Department nervous. And in the 1990s, it seemed rather, our nervousness was calmed a bit by the fact that it seemed rather inconceivable that this declaration was going anywhere. But I'm happy to say that the declaration was adopted by the General Assembly, and that the Indian Law Resource Center and Tim Coulter, its director, deserve a lot of credit for that as being the inspiration and behind it, and Tim Coulter himself is one of the original drafters. The Center has also brought cases before the Inter-American Commission, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, using international law to assert claims on behalf of indigenous communities, particularly claims to land and to resources. And again, in the context of the United States, this is somewhat novel activity, but important activity. And as Tim Coulter mentioned in one of his articles a few years back, he recognized the limitations of using international law instruments, particularly in the U.S. context with indigenous people here. But he also noted that the politics of international law have palpable force among governments, including the United States. And so I think it's important to recognize that the pursuit of justice also involves the playing of politics when necessary, and that international law and politics in this sense are intertwined. I want to just close with another quotation from the mission statement of the Center, because I think it sums up very well what the organization is about. And the quote is this: "When any culture ceases to exist, the whole world is irrevocably diminished. And it's the job of the Indian Law Resource Center to use the rule of law to preserve human rights and dignity of all human beings, in particular of indigenous people." And it is for that work that the Gruber Foundation awards the Justice Prize, in part to the Indian Law Resource Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cushion. We'd like to invite all three recipients to come forward to receive the prize. It's now my pleasure to present today's moderator for the panel discussion with the prize recipients, Justice Arthur Chaskalson, also a Justice Prize laureate and advisor currently to the Justice Prize, and he serves as the chair of the selection committee. Justice Chaskalson was appointed the first president of South Africa's new constitutional court by Nelson Mandela in 1994, and was Chief Justice of South Africa from 2001 to 2005. In addition to the Gruber Justice Prize, he has received the award of Supreme Counselor of the Baobab, Gold, and the Nelson Mandela Award for Human Rights and Health. Justice Chaskalson was president of the International Commission of Jurists, was the first chairperson of the South African Judges Commission, and chaired the eminent jurists panel appointed by the International Commission of Jurists to inquire into the impact of terrorism and counterterrorism on the rule of law, human rights law, and where relevant, international humanitarian law. Judge Chaskalson. I'm so sorry, I made a mistake, and I haven't given the recipients the opportunity to make a few brief comments. So I'm going to suck the words back in and ask our recipients to come forward and make a few remarks. Thank you.
I had half an hour of remarks ready to express, and I thought I'll never get a chance to say this, but I would have worked it into my speech from the bench. Judges have sometimes been known to do that. Patricia Gruber, Ramon Mullerat, Robert Coulter, Associate Dean Maggs, and dear friends who are here. This is a moment for a few acknowledgements. I want to acknowledge the presence of Judge Fable, Judge Bergenthal, my dear friend Justice L'Heureux Dubé, who's come specially today, Professor Robert Post of Yale Law School, Professor George Smith of the Catholic University here in Washington, and many other friends who are in this audience. I acknowledge the assistance I've had throughout this process from Patricia Gruber and the staff of the Gruber Foundation, who are entirely professional and very efficient in the way they prepare for these important prizes. Let me acknowledge also, as all of us would do in our mind, our original teachers. In my case, it's Miss Pontifex. Miss Pontifex, so well named, who taught me how to read the alphabet back in immediate post-war Australia, back in 1945, at the North Strathfield Public School. Great are the nations that have strong public education, and we in Australia have been blessed with that and must always defend it. At university, Professor Julius Stone, who taught me the realism about the law and to put aside the myths. My colleagues in the judiciary over 34 years, who taught me every day I sat with them. Fortunate is a nation that has judges who are uncorrupted, and I can say, as I laid down my judicial robes, that never once in that 34 years was any attempt made to corrupt or subvert the course of justice in my country. As we know, that isn't true of every country in the world, and the Gruber Justice Prize is an inspiration that we should build that form of rule of law society. Rule of law, law but just law in every country on earth. I acknowledge my colleagues who are here with me. We stand shoulder to shoulder in our different spheres. I, as a full-time judge over 34 years, Professor Dugard as a teacher for so many of us, including for myself in Australia, and Tim Coulter in his marvellous work for Indigenous people, which has also been a source of inspiration and lessons to us in Australia, where we haven't, as you will hear in the panel session, always been on the right track of Indigenous rights. I acknowledge my family, my marvellous mother with her perception, my father, who is still alive. Actually, he's still driving, and he takes no nonsense from his children, whom he welcomes on Sundays. He's very strongly into vegetarianism now, and he's always teaching his children new tricks. It's appropriate also that I acknowledge my partner, Johan van Vloten. 41 years and a half he has put up with me. And it's important that I should say that to you, 41 years and a half. If anyone in this audience has any problem with that, though I suspect there aren't any or many here who would, they've got to get over it. It's simply part of the reality of this world. I came here last night from Sao Paulo, where I was working with a new global commission on HIV and the law. And I go from here to a conference in Pattaya in Thailand on sex workers and the law. And some people might say, what's an I-sex judge like you doing mixing with a group like this? Well, we're mixing with them because their human rights are not always respected. And in particular, the GLBT, the gay people of the world, whose human rights are not always respected and protected. And that is not only an affront to human rights, it's a serious imposition on the struggle of the world against the HIV AIDS epidemic. So today in this great country is Columbus Day. As with our Foundation Day in Australia, which marks the arrival of Captain Cook, it is a somewhat ambivalent celebration. And I understand it's a day which the indigenous people, or some of them in this country, describe as the day for indigenous rights. And similarly, I was told this morning, it's coming out day for some people in the United States. So that, again, brings together the three recipients of the 2010 Gruber Justice Prize. We're all coming out. We're all coming out to a recognition of justice for all, equal justice under law for all, which is carved on a mighty building in this city, but sadly has not always been the truth either in the United States of America or in my own country or in South Africa or even worse in many other countries of the world. So I want to tell Robert Coulter that my hope is that we will move in the not too distant future to an international convention for sexual minorities, and that will really upset some people in the State Department, and that would be the criterion for a very good thing. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for my friends being here.
Thank you very much. Well, let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation for conferring the 2010 Justice Prize on me. I'm greatly honoured by this award, and I'm delighted to be in the good company of Michael Kirby and Tim Coulter of the Indian Law Resource Centre. And thank you, Robert Coulter, for the kind words that you said about me. I would also like to thank my wife, Itya, who is here today, for all the support she has given me in what one might describe as the struggle for justice. During the early days when I was Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory, I decided that I would relinquish my position because I was simply overstretched. And Itya encouraged me to continue. She insisted that I continue. She travelled with me to the occupied Palestinian territory when I went on mission. She witnessed many of the injustices that I witnessed, and she was always supportive, even when I was vilified for my reports, and I want to thank her in particular. I want to thank family and friends who are with me today. Jackie, my daughter and her partner Tumi, Dennis and Patty. Dennis Herbstein and I have been partners in the struggle for many years. Dennis as a journalist and I as a lawyer. Jackie is a relative newcomer to the struggle, but she has already made her mark as a legal activist in the field of the promotion of social and economic rights. And I'm delighted to have old friends with me here today, particularly Arthur Chaskalson, with whom I worked for many years in South Africa, Tom Bergenthal, good friend from The Hague, with whom I've sat on the International Court of Justice, and Hussein Hasuna, with whom I now sit on the International Law Commission, but our friendship goes back many, many years. I simply wish to say that when I use the term struggle, I do not refer to the struggle for power or for liberation. I talk about the ongoing struggle for justice. This is a struggle that encapsulates many causes, because injustice is all pervasive. No country is spared its injustices, although some suffer more than others. In my life, I have addressed injustices in South Africa, Namibia, and the occupied Palestinian territory. I hope that I have helped, albeit minimally, in advancing the cause of justice in these countries. I think I've been more successful in Namibia and South Africa. But there's much to be done. There are many dimensions of injustice, ranging from torture to poverty and denial of due process of law to denial or suppression of free speech. And many are engaged in the task of confronting injustice. So today I accept this prize on behalf of many who are active in the struggle for justice, who are unacknowledged. I accept in full awareness of the fact that there is much still to be done. The Gruber Prize, as I understand it, is designed to encourage those engaged in the struggle for justice and against injustice, and I'm proud to receive this award today. Thank you very much.
On behalf of our whole staff and board, and I would like all of you to stand. Please do it. Please stand, because it's this. No, I want to recognize that this award is for the whole Indian Law Resource Center, and I'm just here in their behalf. I'm happy that very nearly our entire board and entire staff is here today. From all of us, thank you to the Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation. You're wonderful to promote justice in this way. It's awfully important. The Indian Law Resource Center staff and board, well, they do deserve this prize. All of you have done magnificent work. It's a very capable group, and I just have the privilege of speaking in their behalf. I'm very happy too that the Ford Foundation is represented here today by my friend Sara Rios. The Ford Foundation has been a great supporter and partner and friend. Other foundations and contributors have been extremely important also. The Lannan Foundation and my late friend. Well, I wasn't going to do this. A good friend, John Lewis, was very generous and very active in our work. Sadly, he is no longer with us. But these funders and supporters are a part of the organization, and they're crucial to what we do. The Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation is really wonderful to recognize what we've been doing these last 33 years, and I'm also very honored and awed to be in the company of John Dugard and Michael Kirby and Tom Bergenthal and so many others that are here today. I must also remember, and I am remembering, to thank the Indian and Alaska Native nations that we serve. They don't get any prizes, and yet they fight for these same things. They suffer for these same things all the same. We merely try to help them. I think of the Yanomami in Brazil, the Onondaga Nation, the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, the traditional Seminole people, the Hopi, the Oglala Lakota, the Inupiaq people in Alaska and northern Canada, and so many others. They are all a part of it. We are a part of them, I suppose. Well, we have a great deal left to do, and that's in a way good because we're ready to do it, and we're going to dedicate all of this prize to carrying on the work, and so I thank you once again very, very much.